Good evening. After a remarkable series of results from last month's programme, let's see if we can do as well tonight. And actually, judging by the results of one call that's coming now as I speak to you, presumably as a result of our trailers, maybe the sort of information we're going to get is going to be rather good. All the reconstructions last month had a big response, including an arrest for murder. First, the abduction in Hertfordshire. A bank manager's mother was kidnapped by a gang, hoping to obtain a ransom. After over 100 calls, possible suspects were identified in London and in Bedfordshire. Two men named in London seem to fit descriptions of the abductors, and inquiries are now underway.
And detectives are also busy with new clues on the murder of Jean Bradley. Mrs. Bradley was on her way home from work when she was stabbed for no apparent reason as she got into her car in Acton in West London. We had well over 600 calls here with 300 possible sightings of the killer. A shred of a plastic carrier bag, which we showed, was identified by the director of a manufacturing company in Ayrshire. We now know that it came from a bag like this. It says Narcissus on it. Police need to hear from any traders who've ever used bags like these, or from anyone who might know anything about them. Perhaps you've used one. Anyway, here's our number here, 081 811 8181.
And detectives pass on their thanks to more than 150 viewers who called about the murders of Harry and Nicola Fuller in Sussex. Several callers gave the same name, and police have now arrested and charged a man with the double murders. He's been remanded in custody, awaiting trial.
Cases where an elderly person is murdered at home are extremely rare. We notice them when they do happen because they're so unusual and because they cause such shockwaves. Certainly it'll be some time before the community around the village of Martlesham in Suffolk recovers from the shock of the murder of 82-year-old Doris Shelley in February. Nobody knows why anybody would have wanted to kill her. The motive may have been burglary, although police haven't yet discovered anything missing from her house. Mrs. Shelley had lived in the old mill house for the past 30 years. Recently, she'd been suffering from ill health, and neighbours and friends like Jenny Frost had been helping her out.
Well, I've known Mrs. Shelley for the past 6-7 years. About a year ago, she had an attack of shingles. So she asked me if I'd do the shopping for her, as she couldn't carry heavy bags. So for 3 times a week, I did her shopping.
Cold out there, isn't it, my dear?
Very happy lady. Expected very little out of life.
Oh, that was nice. That should be quick. You got everything for me?
Yes, all your important bits.
A keen conservationist. She loved her garden, her animals, all the wildlife. Very keen to listen to nature programmes, always up to date with current affairs, especially if that involved animals or anything to do with animals. She's a very kind, caring person, really. She has 2 cats she thinks the world of, always talking to them, chatting when she goes in the garden, calling them.
Sometime towards the end of January, another neighbour, Jacqueline Bear, was surprised to see that Mrs. Shelley apparently had a visitor.
I was driving through from Woodbridge on the main road at Martlesham, and as I was coming towards her bungalow, I saw a car parked actually in the main road with its hazard warning lights on. The boot was open, and I did see a man sort of hurrying into this little side gate.
The gate leads directly to Mrs. Shelley's house. But Mrs. Shelley didn't mention having received a visitor to anyone, and she certainly didn't appear disturbed or concerned. A couple of weeks later, Jacqueline Bear noticed the visitor again as she arrived home with her mother.
She said to me, "There's that car again." And I said, "What car?" And she said, "The red one up near Mrs. Shelley's." So then, of course, I had a look, and I saw a man from the side of the car walk into the little gate.
It is possible the man didn't actually call at the house. In any case, Mrs. Shelley again showed no sign of anything worrying her. Three days after that...
It was about 7:15 in the morning, and I just happened to see a man on the corner, halfway behind a bush sort of thing.
She thought it odd that this man should be hanging around by Mrs. Shelley's gate so early in the morning. The next morning, she saw him again.
He had shoulder-length brown hair, slightly wavy, bushy eyebrows and a fairly big nose, and he was quite tall, in his about 20s or 30s.
Wednesday, the 10th of February. Valentine Scoggins called, as she did every Wednesday.
Known Shelley about 10 years. I used to shop for her.
Thank you. They all came.
Yes, yes. She asked me to get some shopping for her, which I brought round 10th of February, about 1:45. And I just said hello to her and how are you, and she paid me and I went off again.
Mrs. Shelley didn't say she was expecting anyone, but an hour and a half later, she'd obviously received another visit. Mary Whelan was coming home from work.
At about 2:30, I noticed a bright red car parked in Doris Shelley's drive. It was very unusual to see a vehicle in Mrs. Shelley's drive.
Sometime between then and the following morning, Doris Shelley was viciously attacked. Jenny Frost found her.
I came to see Mrs. Shelley on the Thursday, late morning as usual, and got no reply. So I knocked on the window and I saw her laying on the floor. This roused her. She was very agitated and confused, but I shouted to her and told her I was getting help, which I did. I went to hospital with her and stayed with her for several hours and told her that, you know, not to worry. I'd see her again soon and I'd look after the cats, and she smiled.
Well, Doris Shelley died 10 days later. And Roy Lambert, you still haven't been able to establish a definite motive for Doris Shelley's death.
No, this was a particularly vicious attack on a defenceless old lady. It may be that she discovered the man breaking into her home because there were signs of a search having taken place.
The most important clue we can focus on is the red car which was seen parked in Mrs. Shelley's drive.
That's right, she didn't get many visitors, and we have this sighting of a red Ford Sierra type car reversed into her garden, which is most unusual.
And that was that Wednesday afternoon. Then there was a red car seen on a couple of occasions in the fortnight leading up to the attack, which may or may not have been the same car.
Yes, it might not be the same car. Again, it's unusual for cars to park there. A man was seen going to her address. He may have been delivering something, we don't know.
But we certainly need to eliminate him if he's watching. The other unidentified person it's vital you trace is the man that the newspaper girl saw earlier that week.
That's right, he was a particularly scruffy individual who was seen on the Monday and Tuesday early in the morning. His distinguishing features were some dreadlocks or matted hair at the back of his head. He may have been sleeping rough or a traveller. The A45 isn't far from Mrs. Shelley's address, and he may have been passing through.
If you recognise him, please call us. Now, there was an attack on an elderly lady last year, and that was only 5 miles away in the village of Ike, and you think that there may be a link here. What exactly happened?
The link is because Susan Allen at the post office was attacked from behind, as was Doris, in a particularly vicious and violent way.
We have a short piece of security video from the post office, and you can see the man here acting rather strangely. He's trying to hide his face from the camera. He's certainly acting oddly. It's very important that we find out who this man is, because it was shortly after that the postmistress was attacked.
Yeah, she was attacked in September last year. It's important we identify that man. He may have been involved in that offence.
And why do you think they're linked, these two?
Because both the ladies were attacked from behind with unnecessary force to facilitate these crimes.
There is a substantial reward in this case too, isn't there?
Yes, there is a reward for any information, and we really need to catch who has committed these crimes.
Well, please do ring if you can offer any information at all to help. The number here, 081 811 8181, or you can ring Mr. Lambert's headquarters in Suffolk, and that number is 0473 613 577. That's 0473, the code for Ipswich, 613 577.
All 4 of our photo call cases last month brought good results. The first face was identified, and a man has been charged with robbery with the prospect of clearing up 25 other offences too. Viewers' calls provided an address for a second man who's now in custody, charged with conspiracy to steal. After several viewers suggested a name for this man, police made an arrest a week ago. And as for Peter Ian Smith, police have high hopes of finding him now. Calls from more than 50 viewers led to a hotel room which someone very like him had left in a hurry just after last month's programme. But please do call us if you think you know where Peter Ian Smith is now. And now here are Superintendent David Hatcher and Detective Constable Jackie Hames with this month's Gallery of Faces.
Can you help find this man who was last seen in the late shop in Barleycop Lane, Lancaster? At 9:20 on Thursday evening, the 29th of October, he waited for customers to leave before threatening staff with a handgun. He escaped with the shop's takings. Perhaps you saw him later, 5 miles away in the Nether Kellet area, because the next day his size 9 Inter trainers were found there on the grass verge. He's around 25, 5'8", with fair collar-length hair. He was wearing a dark 3/4 length jacket with an elasticated waist, black shell suit bottoms and a black baseball cap. If you know who he is or where he is now, please call.
Do you recognise this woman? We'd like to speak to her in connection with a series of bank frauds. During February of this year in Hampshire and Sussex, money was obtained from banks using fraudulent letters of authority. The woman was seen at Lloyds Bank, Aldershot on the 8th of February, where she withdrew a considerable amount of money. 4 days later, on the 12th of February, she obtained money again from Lloyds Bank, but this time in Haywards Heath. She's about 20, with an average build and shoulder-length mousy hair. She wears a dark jacket and a dark blue skirt. If you know who she is, please call.
Next, do you know where Francis Joseph Tierney is now? Colleagues in Merseyside would like to speak to him in connection with serious drug offences. On Friday, the 10th of July last year, officers searched a house in Wavertree, Liverpool, and recovered a large quantity of heroin and amphetamines. It's believed Francis Tierney may have vital information about the haul. He's 27, 5'10", with short, light brown hair and a scar on his right forearm. If you can offer any information, please call us now.
And finally, the flying squad would like to speak to this man. They believe he may have committed at least 12 robberies since November last year. He's usually armed with a knife and seems to target building societies in towns near to motorways, particularly the M25. On November the 18th, he went into the Britannia Building Society in West London. Perhaps you recognise the distinctive top he's wearing. Then at the beginning of March this year, he threatened staff with a knife at the Bristol and West in Maidenhead. By the end of the month, he decided to change his coat again. Here he is at the Leeds Permanent in Dartford on the 23rd. On the 13th of April, he wore this lumberjack jacket at the Bristol and West in Bromley, Kent, where he again threatened staff with a knife. And the last robbery was a week ago at the Leeds Permanent in Portsmouth. Do you recognise him? He's 25 to 30, about 5'8", with short brown hair, and the baseball cap covers a bald patch on the crown of his head. If you can help with this or any of our other photo call cases, please call us now.
And this is the number here in the studio, 081 811 8181. 081 811 8181.
Next, a robbery in Dorset that has some connections perhaps with Merseyside, not least because it happened at the same time as the Aintree Grand National. Or in fact, like the Grand National, it was something that plainly didn't go as planned. Not only did the robbers fail to find the sort of money they were hoping for, in the gang's attempt to get away, 2 police officers were shot. Our reconstruction starts on the outskirts of Poole at 7:40 on a Friday evening, the 5th of March.
We were going along Dorset Way, travelling towards Wareham Road. And all of a sudden I saw someone running along an embankment, which I thought was strange for that time of night. I told my boyfriend to slow down, to have a closer look, and all of a sudden we saw a second man jump out of the bushes. When they met up, their behaviour was very suspicious, so I told my boyfriend to go and phone the police.
Not this one, no. Over there, the other one. This one. And this one.
2 cars taken from the main Ford dealer weren't seen till 2 days later, when they appeared 2 miles away off Lindsay Road.
By the way, those 2 Sierras are still parked out there, you know. Been there for a few days now.
Before local residents alerted the police, the black car disappeared. Ashley Road in Poole at midday on Tuesday the 30th of March.
I was driving back from the garage with a part for my car, and on approaching the traffic lights, I noticed a Ford Sierra Cosworth, and the window was down on the driver's side, and I thought to myself, what on earth is that young lad doing in a £25,000 car? He looked totally out of place.
Hey, Steve, I hear the lads are having a sweepstake on the Grand National.
4 days later, Saturday, the 3rd of April.
This one here, Mr. Red, 15-1.
Just before 10 a.m, the driver of a blue car followed a black Ford Cosworth into the Macro car park off the Hulls Bay Road. He got a good look at the driver of a white Sierra. The 4 men in the 2 cars seemed to know each other.
I reckon I got a good horse there, Steve.
Yeah, I reckon you got a good chance there, mate.
Should have a quiet day today. They'll all be in watching the race.
Joint favourites, party politics at 7-1, very well backed, and Romany King.
The Unigate dairy in Bailey's Crescent was quieter than normal for a Saturday. Many of the staff had gone home early to watch the race.
Suddenly heard this very strange noise, so I walked through the door and the window was all smashed. And then I stepped out a bit further and I saw this black Sierra parked down the yard and quickly memorised the number.
Zeta's lad, who's been very well back today, is 15-2, 9-1 Royal Athlete and his stable companion Garrison Savannah.
Hello, police. Unigate Poole, Bailey Crescent. There's a robbery going on. The door's all kicked in, the glass everywhere. There's a black Sierra parked in the yard ticking over. Open the door!
She had nowhere to hide and no choice but to let them in.
Where's the money?
Over there.
It's all right, just sit down.
I was very scared, but I was trying to keep calm, but answer the questions, just cooperate.
How much is here?
My thoughts were, I hope no one else comes up, because
Where's the rest?
I thought it'd get nasty if someone else came up,
I know you've got more.
because you could see they meant business.
Meanwhile, the robber's car was attracting more attention.
I thought to myself, well, this is not parked in the right place. But the driver smiled at me and gave the thumbs up, which allayed my suspicions.
The gunmen searched frantically. It seems they were acting on bad information and had expected much more money. Due to milk rounds being franchised, Unigate handles far less cash than used to be the case.
Come on, let's get off. You stay there a few minutes.
Alan, there's a robbery going on.
You're joking? I went out to the entrance of the servery door and I saw this chap come out wearing a balaclava. And I thought, the storeman, he's not joking. I couldn't believe it. And with that, I saw the car pull slowly down the entrance to Bailey Crescent and turn left.
You all right? You all right?
They've taken the money.
Don't worry, they've called the police. As long as you're all right, don't worry about the money.
All units to make Bailey Crescent. Possible robbery in progress at Unigate Dairy.
Yeah, Camford incident car responding en route.
All units offending the vehicle leaving Dairy believed to be a black Ford Sierra Cosworth, registration Kilo 581 Delta Bravo Golf. I repeat.
I'll tell you what, Steve, we'll park up by Crazy Max. They may be coming down Wimborne Road.
There is, Charlie. He's over there. He's over there. Yeah, incident car at scene, Flixbridge roundabout, vehicle sighted.
It's a police car. I think it wants us to stop.
No, I think it's that Sierra it's trying to stop.
We've got it blocked in traffic. Pull over, mate. Pull over.
Don't like the look of this.
Watch it. He's got a gun, mate. Watch it.
As soon as the window went in, the first thing I became aware of was just a huge pressure in the vehicle. You feel it all over your body. The next thing, you're showered with glass, and I then became aware of a tremendous pain in my right arm. I looked at my hand and saw that it was bleeding.
In my rearview mirror, I saw a black car coming up. Noticed it was a Cosworth being driven badly. Looked like it could have been a joyrider. It's a fast road anyway, but you don't normally get people driving that quickly along it.
The Cosworth was last seen speeding the wrong way down Churchill Road towards Lower Parkston.
Within a few minutes, other police officers arrived at the scene just to make sure we were okay. And with about 2 or 3 minutes after that, that's when the ambulance arrives and took us down to Poole Hospital. Both of us were actually very lucky. It could have been a lot worse. I've received 7 shotgun pellets to the right thigh, 4 of which have been removed. 3 are still left in there. I should be off work for about 2 to 3 months at the most.
I received injuries to my inside right forearm. It's caused damage to the tendons and the nerves. And I also took quite a number of pellets on my left arm. But the main thing is now I've got to work on physiotherapy, and it's going to be a few months' work before I come back.
Tony Rogers, obviously the best chance of finding these people is through that Black Cosworth. There aren't many in the United Kingdom, let alone in a single town like Poole.
Yes, and we know that the offenders had the car for nearly a calendar month. We know it's only done 17 miles.
17? 1-7?
Yes, so it's been stored somewhere in the Poole area.
In that case, it's quite possible that people have seen it. Local people have seen it in a garage somewhere, or even been shown it by the robbers.
Yes, that's right. And on that day, Nick, 2 of our police officers nearly lost their lives. We are desperate. We're desperate to clear this crime. And I would appeal to anybody who's got any information, any small-time villain that might have been offered the car for sale, or might have been shown it, or heard another villain brag about stealing it. Please come forward. I'm prepared to meet them at any time, and I'm prepared to offer them complete protection. There's £10,000 on the table. We need to get these to stop them from doing it again.
You think that the people who stole the car might not have been the same people who carried out the robbery, in other words?
Yes, it's a strong possibility.
OK, the car itself had a driver from whom we got a pretty good description during the robbery, because, of course, he was seen giving that thumbs-up sign. Can you describe him to us?
Yes, he's a chap about 20 years of age, a baby face, clean-shaven, short, blonde, curly hair and quite slim.
The registration plate, K581DBG, was false. It's actually a J-registered car. They put this plate on. Do you know where those plates came from? Were they stolen or made up or what?
No, we need to know that. We know that they're a Jepson make. We think that they may be made in 2 separate locations to hide suspicion. The rear plate has got a cellulite grey backing to it. We would ask anybody in the motor trade to look through their records, inquire with their staff, to see if they've made up these plates.
Now, the other thing is we saw in the reconstruction at the Macro car park earlier on that day, Saturday the 3rd of April, the guy in the white Sierra, he seemed to know the people in the Cosworth. He might be completely unconnected with this offence.
Yes, we would very much like to trace him. He's a man about 35 years of age, short and mousy hair, stocky build, and the witness says that he'd seen him somewhere before, so it may well be he's a local fellow.
The car, the Cosworth, eventually was dumped in Hillman Road. A lot of witnesses might have seen that taking place and not have connected it with a robbery or anything untoward.
Yes, we would appeal for anybody that was in the Hillman Road area that may have seen 3 men coming away from a nice-looking black Cosworth. One of those 3 would have at least been carrying a large, dark blue, head-type sports bag, which of course would have been containing the 2 shotguns and the money.
And it would have been quite a big sports bag, because one of those shotguns was not cut down. It was a full-length barrel.
That's right, yes.
OK. Now, this is similar to the mask that we're using. Now, there are thousands of these in joke shops up and down the country. It's obviously very difficult to appeal for this, but presumably you want to know anybody who vaguely fits any of those descriptions or could be linked with that Black Cosworth, the White Sierra, something, who had a mask like this.
Yes, that's right. And again, of course, there may be somebody who has seen somebody in possession of a mask like this under suspicious circumstances. Perhaps they know they've got a record for violence or thieving. I want them to contact us, please.
Do bear in mind the seriousness of this offence. Somebody, as Tony Rogers said, could easily have got killed. If you can help, the number here in the studio is 081 811 8181, or you can ring the incident room in Poole Police Station on 0202 22 33 44. That's 0202, the code for Poole, 22 33 44.
Well, we're getting a lot of calls through here to the studio at the moment, so if you are finding it difficult to get through, then please do keep trying. One viewer took the opportunity to get through right at the very beginning of the programme, presumably having seen the trailer, called in on the Unigate robbery, naming a family that it's claimed knows about the robbery, so that one's being followed up already. The Narcissus carrier bag I showed in connection with the Jean Bradley murder, several people are calling on that and suggesting where it might have been bought. A name has been suggested for the M25 robber in photo call, and in fact all our photo call cases are getting good calls. The woman bank fraudsters received a few name suggestions, and Doris Shelley, I can see a lot of calls coming through on that, but I haven't been able to find out exactly what they are yet. I'll find out for later. But now with our incident desk cases from around the country, here again this month are Detective Constable Jackie Hames and Superintendent David Hatcher.
On Saturday the 10th of April in Stoke-on-Trent, Valentino's nightclub was the scene of an armed robbery. At about 11 a.m, two men posing as motorcycle couriers threatened staff with a handgun and dagger. One employee was knocked unconscious before the cashier was forced to hand over a large amount of money. We believe they escaped in a red Volkswagen GTI with an E prefix and the letters HAT. It was seen in a public car park close to the nightclub. One of the robbers left behind this Japanese-style dagger. Do you recognise these markings? The first man's about 20, 6 foot with a medium build. He was wearing a dark-coloured quilted anorak-type jacket and had a white crash helmet. The second man is also around 20 with short, dark hair. He was wearing a similar coat with a light green fluorescent bib and had a black crash helmet. If you can give any information, please call Staffordshire Police on 0785 234 871. That's 0785, the code for Stoke, 234 871.
Although on Crime Watch we always appeal for the public's help, the witness in our next case got involved to an extent few people would be prepared to. Fortunately for him, his courage didn't have tragic consequences.
What's meal tonight then?
7:30. I thought we might go to that, that place where we first met, actually. That'd be nice.
Robert and Alison were in Exeter High Street at 2:30 on Thursday the 25th of February. They had one important job to do before their forthcoming wedding.
It was Alison's 21st birthday. I'd finished work early, she had the day off, and we decided to go and get some wedding rings.
Yeah. This one is quite nice.
Yeah, it's okay, isn't it? Yeah.
Try this one.
We're looking for a matching pair, actually.
Yeah, I can do that for you.
Part-time at the jeweller's for 8 years.
Oh, well, I saw one like that in the window, actually. It was
Yes.
Nobody move. You! Over here.
Where do you want
Open the
first?
door.
Which one?
Quickly! Quickly! I said nobody move!
I thought he looked so stupid, but when he came in and grabbed my arm, I knew it wasn't a joke. I felt, why me? What have I done wrong? When he pushed me, I really felt that he meant business.
The robber went for the most expensive watches. And while he was occupied...
It's okay, run for it. Go on. You're all right now.
Help! There's a man in over gun. I don't want to call the police.
And this is the real robber. The attack only took a few minutes, and Robert decided to follow him.
I thought, sod it, he's not going to get away with it. I've got to go after him.
Don't follow me!
When the man pointed the gun at me, I wasn't worried for my safety at all, really. I didn't really think he was going to shoot me.
They ran down Cathedral Yard, and the two locals who joined the chase were quite unaware of what had just happened.
Stop it! Stop it! Stop me! Stop me!
I don't think the lads who joined in knew he had a gun at all.
You calling me a thief, are you?
The man is in his 20s, around 6'2", and of slim build. Were those glasses he was wearing a disguise? After the gunman had threatened them, the locals thought it too dangerous to follow. The robber went into the car park and was lost from sight. We believe a witness might have seen the robber leaving the NCP car park shortly afterwards in a Series 4 grey Rover with an H prefix and the letters LJB. Did you see him, or better still, do you recognise him? Here he is without the glasses. He's in his 20s and around 6'2". If you can help, please call the incident room on 0392 451 634. That's 0392, the code for Exeter, 451 634.
We need your help to identify this man who raped a 20-year-old woman on Sunday, the 28th of March. She'd gone out with friends to her local pub in her home village of Hingham in Norfolk. At about 10:15 p.m, she began the short walk home. She went down a public footpath known locally as Tally Alley when she was grabbed, pushed to the ground and raped. After her ordeal, the woman ran back to the pub and raised the alarm. Do you recognise her attacker? He's between 35 and 40, about 6'1", medium build, with short fair hair, and he's clean shaven. He was wearing a wide-band wedding ring and a digital watch with a black strap. He spoke with a Norfolk accent. If you recognise this man or can help in any way, call Norwich Police on 0603 768 769. That's 0603, the code for Norwich, 768 769.
And perhaps you can help in identifying the thieves who raided this antique shop in Colville, Leicestershire. 2 men entered the shop at 10:45 a.m. on Monday the 26th of April. They forced the assistant into the back of the shop where they bound and gagged her. A customer disturbed them and has been able to give this description of one of them. He's about 5'8" to 5'10", 50 to 55 years old, stocky with curly grey hair, a moustache and lightly coloured framed glasses. The shop specialised in Victorian and Edwardian jewellery, and the thieves managed to get away with a substantial amount of property. Items stolen include this gold Albert and Guard chain and cufflinks, and this diamond and ruby and sapphire butterfly brooch. Jewellery boxes identical to these, featuring the shop's trademark Keystone Antiques, were also stolen. Both men spoke with a local accent, so if you have any information regarding them or the antique jewellery, officers at Leicestershire would like to hear from you. The number to ring is 0533 530066. That's 0533, the code for Leicester, 530066.
And of course you can always ring the studio on 081 811 8181. That's 081 811 8181.
Our last case is the murder of a young man in Gloucestershire. The death of Richard Miles at his home in Newtown near Stroud has been baffling police ever since it happened 2 months ago. In the weeks just before his death, Richard had seemed rather preoccupied, so whatever was worrying him may well be connected with his murder.
Richard was a very quiet, deep-thinking lad who just liked country life, taking a dog for a walk. Just simple things in life, really, and he was quite content with that. Right, Richard was 29, he was the eldest boy. He was the one I always worried about because he was so shy and quiet. And I always knew if he wanted to tell me something, he'd follow me round the house. It'd take a long time before he could tell me what he wanted to say.
Richard still lived with his parents in a tiny hamlet called Newtown, near Stroud. It's off the A419 Stonehouse to Eastington Road.
He was terrible for getting up in the mornings. It was always a job to get him up. He'd always be late when he left for work, about 10 or 10:30.
For the last 10 years, Richard had been working at Martin Pollard's garage in Frampton, about 3 miles from home.
Richard was always late for work in the mornings, but he always made his time up. He was always last to leave at night. His speciality was sports cars and classic cars. It's a very labour-intensive job, and he was very good at it. In the recent weeks, he seemed preoccupied. Nobody knew why. I didn't like to ask. He was the sort of lad that you didn't like to pry into his business.
Sometime in the middle of January, the woman who lives next door to the Miles remembers a disturbance one lunchtime.
I heard some angry voices coming from next door, so I thought I'd go and have a nose. And as I reached the back door, the argument had stopped. So I went outside and I saw the back of somebody going up the drive. All right. I was surprised by this because he's never kept me dead before, and it was totally out of character. But a couple of days later when I saw him, he seemed all right and didn't mention the argument.
Whatever his worries, Richard carried on with his normal routine, going to the pub with his closest friend most nights of the week.
Rich was a very good friend of mine. We grew up together and did a lot of things together. Bit of a one-man band type of person. We had a very small circle of friends, did things in that small circle. We never had any reason to argue or disagree about any subject or anything at all. I don't believe he could start an argument or anything like that with anybody, really.
Please, lads.
I always waited up for him to come home. He used to come home about 20 to 12 at night and take the dog out for a walk. And Rusty, well, I idolised Richard. He always seemed to know what time it was when Richard would be home.
As usual, it was after midnight that Tuesday when Richard took the dog for its nightly walk along the towpath. Richard spent very little money, but he'd regularly buy quantities of cannabis and always enjoyed a smoke by the canal. It's lunchtime the next day. Wednesday, the 10th of March. Richard usually bought sandwiches at this petrol station and ate them back at home, but no one at the garage remembers seeing him that Wednesday. Richard did go home, though. A witness remembers seeing his car. An hour later, Richard should have been back at work. His employer tried to call him. At 2:35, this witness was driving past the back of the Miles' cottage.
I passed the last cottage and glanced to my left. I seen two men in the field, which made me inquisitive. They looked as though they were squaring up for a fight.
A couple of 100 yards along the road, the witness remembers seeing a young woman with a child in a buggy. She was heading towards that field. Now quite worried, Richard's employer went to look for him.
It was so unlike Richard to be late back from dinner that I was concerned whether he'd had an accident or had broken down. So I went to look for him. When I seen his car at the back of his cottage, I wondered whether to go in, but I thought perhaps he mightn't like that.
Half a mile away, this schoolgirl was jogging alongside the canal towards Newtown.
He made no attempt to move, he just stood there facing me. He was in his early 20s, of slim build and medium height. He had shoulder-length, dark, straggly hair, which was unkempt. I noticed he had a stain on his right elbow, so I quickened my pace and carried on running for another half a mile or so.
Richard Miles had been found stabbed to death about an hour earlier.
The time stood still for me. I'm staring on March the 10th. I still wait up for him to come in. I can't accept the fact that he's not here. And if anybody knows anything at all, doesn't matter how meaningless they think it is, then they'll get in touch.
Well, John Bennett, as we said earlier, there seems so little you can go on, but first of all, you need to talk to the man the schoolgirl saw there by the canal.
Yes, he was there less than half a mile away within an hour of the time that Richard met his death, and we do appeal for him to come forward.
Because she wasn't the only person to see him either, was she?
No, there was another person who saw him just before that time, but she could give the best description.
Now, we've heard that Richard had seemed slightly preoccupied in the months leading up to his death, but have you any clue at all as to why he was killed?
we can find no reason why anyone should want to harm Richard at all. He was a very quiet individual. Occasionally he travelled to Bristol and Cardiff area, mainly to listen to live music, but sometimes to purchase drugs, and that was only cannabis, which he used most for himself.
And he wasn't a dealer of any sort? I mean,
not at all. He did distribute to very close friends cannabis alone, but he wouldn't be a dealer, and I wouldn't describe him as that at all.
But anyone from that part of his life, it's essential that they call in?
Yes, we've put a lot of effort into trying to find that information, and we've had very little response.
There were several people in the area that afternoon who you'd like to talk to near Richard's cottage, and they may have seen something important. First of all, there was a red car seen by several people that afternoon.
Yes, this was an MG. It wasn't very far from his home. There was also another vehicle which is described as a Cavalier that had a wheel trim missing, and we want to trace that. That was less than 200 yards from his home in Newtown. There was also a small bicycle that was left against the side of a gate. We want to trace the owner of that.
So that's a pale blue mountain bike?
It is. And there were joggers in the area that surprisingly have not come forward, and we would really like to trace them.
And there was the woman with the buggy that one of the witnesses saw about 2:30.
Yes, she may have been visiting the area, and we'd like her to get in touch with us.
You believe, don't you, that somebody somewhere must know the truth about Richard's death?
Yes, we do. The investigating team believe that somebody does know precisely why he met his death, and perhaps who actually caused it.
Well, let's hope so. If you can help, please do call. Superintendent John Bennett and his colleagues are here to take the calls in the studio, and that's 081 811 8181, or you can phone his incident room at Stroud Police Station direct, and that's 0453 766 311. That's 0453 766 311.
There is so much remarkable information coming into the studio now. Frankly, there's a lot of hyperbole going around with words like fantastic and extraordinary. On the robbery in Poole in Dorset and the shooting of the police officers, information just coming in. I can't tell you a great deal about it, but names put forward on Doris Shelley, a name for a man seen by the newspaper girl, a different name, I must say, for the man seen in the Ike post office robbery. That was on the security video. On photo call, the M25 robber, the same name keeps coming up again and again. The same is so for the woman involved in the bank fraud. Joseph Tierney, we've got a different name for him, and several people have now given the same different name for Joseph Tierney. He's wanted in connection with the drug offence. Incident desk, a great deal more on that. The Valentino nightclub robbery, the dagger has been identified as ninjutsu. A great deal more, and it's still coming in.
Well, our lines are still open. They're open, in fact, for nearly 2 more hours. So if you haven't got through yet, please do keep trying. I hope we'll have more to report later on when we come back with our Crime Watch update, and that'll be at 11:45.
Meanwhile, do bear in mind that we've crammed together many of the country's worst crimes, and they took place over several months. Thank heavens watching TV is the nearest that most of us are going to come to anything approaching them. So don't have nightmares, do sleep well. Good night.
Good night.
Hello and welcome back. The phones have actually fallen fairly quiet in the last 15-20 minutes or so, but before then, I promise you it was hectic, and it's been As always at this time, pretty difficult to evaluate the results. You can gather how difficult if I tell you that on just one case, which is the robbery in Poole and the shooting of the 2 police officers, we'd had over 240 calls about 5 minutes ago. There's a tremendous amount to go through. One of those calls, incidentally, looking very exciting. Also on the Doris Shelley murder, some really promising information come through on that. And on the Richard Miles murder too. 2 intriguing pieces of information. Sue.
Well, we'll start with that case, the murder of Richard Miles outside his family's cottage in Newtown in Gloucestershire. Shortly after lunchtime on Wednesday, March the 10th, Richard was found stabbed. That same afternoon, witnesses saw a man behaving strangely not far away. Now, you've had some calls on him, but as Nick said, you've had 2 particularly intriguing calls.
Yes, I feel that there's been quite a breakthrough. These relate to some information in Cardiff, which I don't really want to relate at the moment. We will be following that information up, but we would like those callers to come back to us again if they would. We've also had some information that's very interesting relative to someone in London, and we'd like that caller to come back.
So this is a lot of new information relating to Richard's cannabis habit?
Yes, it is, and to reasons why someone might have wanted to harm him.
Right. There are a few people who still haven't come forward. You were hoping the woman with the buggy, who might well have seen something, would come forward, but she hasn't so far.
Yes, we feel very certain that she would have passed the 2 men in the field and she would have seen them. And we would like to trace her and the 2 men who were in the field that were squaring up to one another.
And of course that man who 2 witnesses saw with the long straggly hair.
Yes, we've had a lot of information giving suggestions who he may be, and some of them are local and they look pretty interesting. But we would like more calls in that respect.
Right, well, some good stuff there to be going on with. John Bennett, thank you.
Some good stuff too in Photocall. Jackie, good in some, a little bit mixed though. Let's start with that robbery, the armed robbery in Lancaster, which goes back a long way. It's last October, isn't it?
Yes, that's right. Unfortunately, a little disappointing. Only 10 calls, mainly sightings. But if you know who he is or even where he is, please call us now.
Francis Joseph Tierney, he was wanted. It's thought he's got some information that could help police about a pretty big drugs haul.
Yeah, very pleased with that result. Over 22 calls here. Again, sightings, but some callers have suggested he may be using other names. And the officer tells me he's got 10 pieces of information he's particularly keen on, so watch this space.
And the robber who was operating around the M25 sort of ring around London, or inside that ring, the police think he's been involved in at least a dozen robberies. Quite strong stuff on that, I think.
Yeah, excellent response. Certainly the most promising so far. Over 29 to the studio and a handful of names. In fact, 6 callers are given the same name. So, again, fingers crossed for a good result next month.
Jackie, thank you.
Well, we appeal for your help on the kind of case that is actually, thankfully, very rare. An elderly lady, Doris Shelley, was found murdered at her home in the village of Martlesham in Suffolk in February. We asked for your help to find the driver of a red car which was seen near her home the day she died. Now, we didn't actually find the car that was in her garden so far, but there was another red car which we mentioned was seen near her house in the fortnight before she was attacked, and that one you've been able to eliminate.
That's right. I'm pleased to say we've had a call from a local tradesman who believes he was the person parks his car there and delivering to Doris's bungalow.
So that sorts that one out, but what you haven't sorted out, as I said, is the car that was actually seen in Doris's garden on the day that she was attacked.
Yes, it's still vitally important that we get some calls and identify this car.
You've had some names mentioned though, haven't you? You have had some good calls in that respect.
Yes, we haven't had an overwhelming response, but we've had some really good calls. We've had a call into the room here with some certain information, and a similar call to the incident room in Suffolk, which we're extremely interested in and we will be following up tomorrow.
What about that scruffy man seen hanging around Doris Shelley's gate?
We've had a number of calls suggesting suitable names for that man, and we'll pursue them tomorrow.
And most importantly, you were linking that possibly with an attack a year earlier, also on an elderly lady, at a post office 5 miles away in a village called Ike. And we showed a piece of security video. Has anybody recognised that man?
Yes, that's right. We've had somebody, in fact, name that man, but we're still interested to see if anybody else can recognise that man as well.
So that could be a real breakthrough?
Yes, it could.
Thank you very much indeed.
Now the robbery in Dorset. Masked men attacked a dairy in Poole.
Open the door!
When a police patrol car found them, the gangsters opened fire.
What's he? He's got a gun, mate. What's it?
2 officers were shot and injured. Tony Rogers, I was saying earlier, a big response to this. How good is the information?
Yes, as you said, we've over 240 calls. It's going to mean an awful lot of work for us, but that's okay. We're prepared to put in whatever resources is needed. Please keep ringing. We're quite excited about the person who rang up and said they may well be able to identify the location where the car's been kept from the time it was stolen to the time it was used on the robbery.
Now, this is the black Ford Cosworth that was stolen about a month before the robbery, stolen in March, using the robbery in April, and it had only done 17 miles in that intervening period.
That's right, so we know it was kept somewhere in the Poole area.
Do you think someone could lead you to where it was stored?
Yes.
And what about the driver? This was the chap who gave a thumbs-up sign during the robbery to someone who was a bit inquisitive about it. You had a good description of him.
Yes, we've had a number of calls giving names that to identify the identity of this person. But in particular, a lady rang up. She wouldn't give us her name and address, but she gave us a very interesting name. I would appeal for that lady to ring back. I would very much like to speak to her, ask for myself or one of my officers here involved in the inquiry. Very much like to speak to her again. Very interesting lead.
Okay, very, very serious offence. By the grace of God, those 2 police officers weren't killed. Sue?
Well, let's see how we're doing on incident desk. First of all, David, the robbery at Valentino's nightclub last month in Stoke-on-Trent.
Yes, over 80 calls on that particular case, most in relation to this dagger, which was left behind by the robbers, telling us where we can buy it, and the fact that this mark on the front says ninjutsu. What we want to know is who's had a knife like this and doesn't have it now, because that's what we want to identify. Also, we've had a couple of names suggested for those shots, the faces that we showed, so it's quite possible we might get a result with that. And also some sightings of that VW Golf GTI EHAT. That'll be interesting too.
Good. The robbery at a jeweller's in Exeter, where one of the customers in the shop actually gave chase to the man, even though he was armed.
Yes, I have a number of names suggested, none of them the same or that match up yet. We've also had a link to another offence elsewhere that might come good. And we've also had reports of watches that were stolen, similar to those stolen, being offered for sale from the boot of a car. And also we've had a number of that car given to us as well.
And we've also had some good calls on the case in Leicestershire, the robbery at an antique shop in Colville.
Yes, same name suggested twice there, Sue, so that might be hopeful. And also sightings of similar jewellery being sold at an antiques fair.
Well, good stuff. Thank you very much, David.
Well, our lines are going to be closing in about 18, 19 minutes' time, about 12:15. If you haven't been able to get through, and there's another flurry of calls coming in right now, we have been pretty busy, we'll have local numbers for you in just a moment. As ever, thanks to everyone who has called. With your help, many of the crimes that we feature tonight are now being solved, so don't have nightmares, do sleep well. Good night.
Good night.
Welcome to another crime scene.